Hi there, okay, my friends of the low CUB. Let me start here from a perspective of approaching vehicles. So I'm standing now, telephone about on my eye height, and I'm about 1.80 m tall. So this is how you look down on my current mock-up, and the mock-up is relatively correct. So sit tight, relax, and listen carefully. This subject is quite complicated, and it's complicated because I do not want to make any mistakes by building and executing this thing. There is no point in rushing into it and then needing to redo it or losing the facilitation of having something rather straightforward and simple. So, as you might recall from one of my earlier videos, if not, then please go and find it. It's named very similar to this video. I started off with a couple of Honda CUBs. They're all of them more or less, you could call them all abandoned, and Tsunami more or less did things to the major part. If not, they've just been parked because they didn't run anymore and sat in the woods for decades or outside and overgrown and whatnot. Some of them I bought from some friends that had them behind the house and so on. So I found 3.5 CUBs, and I had them dismantled because I was moving at the time from Malaysia to Turkey, and we are currently in Turkey. This is about 2 to 3 years later, and I haven't done much but thinking about it. So I came up with the sketch after a couple of sketches. I guess this was my first one. It's not very good. I was thinking about the logic of it, how to lower this so it is not well prepared, mainly on how to lower the back without much complication. I was having some inspiration of others. This one here really worked for me, but then again, this is a hard tail and quite elaborate, involving a tube bender and whatnot. I found this, I really like this motorcycle, but that's a different story. But the main theme here is rear tire. Rear tire. Rear tire. Rear tire. And yeah, this is gonna be for my rear tire too. Yeah, let's go back to this. Some things I love because they're tiny. I love little Honda monkey bikes. I love basic freedom outside. I love classics. I love hot rods. I love rust. So here was my little tour of, this is actually a massively short extract of many foxes that run about in my brain. The only vehicle, the other vehicle that I own is this one. It's another unfinished project, of course. And okay, let's go back to my Honda CUB. I basically decided that this, because it's such a simple motorcycle, is going to be my first internal combustion engine, vintage style hot rod, whatnot. And I'm gonna make something really cool out of this otherwise rather ugly motorcycle in my books. I mean, is this might be everything that Mr. Honda had thought of for some delivery, one-handed delivery on your head noodles in Japan, and it went around the world and became the biggest selling motorcycle of all time with 130 million or I don't know what. Anyway, So there's a reason why this is good and the most selling motorcycle on the planet. Ugly it is still. And definitely one of the reasons is quality, longevity. And I remember when I was a 15-year-old boy in Germany, and I was riding on a Kreidler Flory, heavily tuned, and I also had a Hercules with a Sachs two-stroke engine, 2-speed. And I remember playing with them and opening them. Nothing is complex and nothing is beautifully engineered and nothing is high quality and thought of like this engine. So I mean, I'm currently in the middle of extracting the best pieces for me to make one engine, and I'm using as many original parts as I can, one of which is the cylinder head, which I have completely restored, and it's original, untouched. It's not honed, it's just slightly sanded with 600 and 800 grit sandpaper on the inside of the barrel, so there's no dirt anymore. It's repainted, it's brushed and whatnot. I spend a lot of love. And yeah, anyway, so the engine, hats off to Mr. Honda's quality pursuit, which has been successful. Anyway, so I made a video which is part 1 of the series about what I'm planning to do, and now I'm just coming back with a little bit more of a corrected mock-up here, because I need to think about how I'm going to go about it. And in my experience, simplicity is key. So if you do too many modifications at one point in time and you lose datum on your vehicle, you're kind of lost, and you need a very elaborate frame building jig, which I'm trying to avoid. I'm trying to basically extend the datums that are there on the frame and not risk them. So let me get into the details of the modifications. Now, one of the keys, as I mentioned before, and is showing very nicely on my sketch, is, and we're like, my telephone is about 1.5 meters away from the sketch, and you can still see it. This is it in full zoom. Big rear tire, chunky rear tire, and related in relation, the seat height is lower than the top edge of the tire. So that obviously means, okay, we started with a bigger tire. Fine, I have that. And as you can see on my mock-up, I'm not quite there yet. The seat height, now imagine a skateboard that has been cut down and sits on top of the tank. We're still going to be about 5 centimeters out of being as low as the top edge of the rear tire, and I'm going to elaborately explain how I get there. But now we have all the players standing about here. This is the biggest tire that I can think of using. It also happens to be a recycled tire that was replaced by something fresher or bigger or smaller, I don't know. It's also from Malaysia. I cleaned it, it's good, and it helps me do the mock-up. This is the right size. I have aluminium rims for it, I have the original hubs for it, I have a set of spokes so I can build the wheels soon. I ordered the tubes, so we'll have wheels sooner or later. After Christmas we will have wheels. Wheels is some of the first things that I need. But meanwhile I need a lot of brain traffic here in order to make this. Now, this is the worst frame out of 3 original C70 CUBs that I have, and according to the engines at least, I'm not familiar with the frame numbers. I have the frame number obviously right here, and that is something that's religiously kept. So we have a C70, and let's
have a look at the amount of digits. This is short of what the 1 millionth C70 build. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yes, this is 950,000. So we're like 49,000 and something short of 1 millionth cup. And all my engines are 1 millionth and something. So somehow I'm thinking that either the engines have been used in similar motorcycles or they're not matching numbers, but close enough. So I have the right type of engines for the right type of frame. So yeah, the frame is bad. The frame is bad. You can see Swiss cheese, some of the things have been cut off. This is a type frame that this has a plastic rear fender, so I didn't cut the rear fender off. My other frames have metal fenders welded on, but since I don't want that, this is the right frame for me. Also, it's really like, I don't feel bad about modifying that. So how do I start? Let me put it this way. In order to improve the relationship of height between my rear tire to my seat, I need to come lower with the body or up with the rear wheel. So let's talk about how to bring the rear wheel up. And mind you, I want suspension. That's the original suspension arms. And I want to use the original fork. This is the original fork. Now, and I would even like to avoid extending the rear fork, but that's another subject. I have some more forks. I have a really bad one that is rusted in the key areas. It's completely rusted away here. So, and it's got some rust holes in the arms. So it would be easy enough to cut it somewhere here and put a square tube in it, and then make up for the difference and all weld it shut and make it look like a original fork that's just strangely a little bit longer. So, but let's start to how I will approach this. And maybe we need some extra light. So, if you see what is going on in here, there's a lot of rust happening and a lot of structural rigidity missing. So maybe I can look at it from the top a little bit easier. Let's have a look. I mean, this here would be the internal mud guard that's also been disintegrated and rusted away and quite challenged. It's not there anymore, and it's in my way anyway, because I want to lower the tank and I want to lower the whole, I want to compress or section this body just like you do in hot rodding terms for similar reasons. But let's start with the main tube of the frame. Can you see? Down there. It has separated from the side-to-side tube that holds that usually holds the axis. So this thing here, that is where the axis goes in, this axis, okay? So this is the swing arm axis that should come through here. Disintegrated, rust holes, eaten away edges. So I want the rear wheel to go backwards, and I want to let it come up. Now, if you look at this situation, the housing for do some yoga here. The housing, where is that tube? Now here's my savior, okay? That's the piece that I'm going to deal with. So let's just say, how can I point to this? So you actually, yeah, you see that horizontal tube that houses the axis has been completely detached from the main frame tube. Okay, so I obviously need to recreate that. And you see that the side-to-side tube that houses the rear axis, this axis of the swing arm, is attached onto the main tube from the bottom, and I'm actually going to change that. I'm going to weld it on top of the tube instead. And first of all, I'm going to sleeve that. Okay, let me get up. I'm going to sleeve this. So here's the piece. It's probably the right size and length already. Sorry, it is the right size and it might be the right length. So I'm going to detach and cut away all the disintegrated part. So maybe the last 70 millimeters I will just need to get rid of. And then I'm going to slide this tube on top of this. So this is slightly wider, so it slides on the outside on top. So I'm going to slide it all the way up, so the tube's going to sit somewhere, side view, sit here, okay? Sit here. So it begins. I will slide it up as far as I possibly can, and hopefully it's going to sit here. I'm going to drill some holes, I'm going to weld, I'm going to drill the holes from the top. I can somewhere here and here, weld it through the top. I can come in from the bottom, weld it on from the top, bottom, and I'm going to end up with a tube somewhere around here in relationship to the rear swing arm. Then this will be welded on top. So you see, we're going down, and then we change sides, and then we're probably about where this now rests. Maybe a little, yeah, it's pretty much where it's going to be. So that, for mock-up purposes, not bad. And then I have basically positioned the rear swing arm as I think it will be. And then I have mounted the suspension arm on the original eyelets axes. Okay, so that means I have, so far I only have to make sure that this slides on the original tube, that is a natural extension of it, and then this is welded on 90 degrees in a horizontal fashion in order to, in relationship to the extension of the main tube of the frame. All right, complicated? Yes, I had sometimes been thinking about how to come about this, but here's the, so far is the, this is just an extension, so it naturally sits tight, friction tight on the original tube, and it just extends it. And then this one here will be just be welded on horizontally and 90 degrees. So that's the first challenge. And then we have to insert the original ends to the axis, housing for the rear swing arm, and then we have a new swing arm axis and housing on the frame. Okay, this will then put us somewhere here with the center of the rear wheel. I am currently thinking about not to move the mounting position. I could do that, and on my original design it moved down here, but I'm thinking that other than compromise, okay, you move this from here to somewhere here. You see my drawings here. This is more extreme, and that was me trying to do as little extending to the rear swing as possible, with the idea of repositioning the axis from here, from here to there, and that I only came up with today with this idea. So that obviously already gives me about 70 millimeters of rear positioning of the rear swing arm, meaning I don't need to extend the rear fork, which I think is clever because it eliminates any guesswork in any shonky business for not being straight. Now then it continues. We have got a mounting point for the suspension arm. We got the original suspension arm. We have the original rear hub, and the tire fits nicely. I just need to wiggle it around this mounting point for the brake fixture. So leaves me with just patching up at the very, very compromised fixture of that. But if I leave it here, it's going to be straight. Other than it might have moved because of the rust, but I can carefully patch this up and make sure it's in the right place. There's still everything there that I need to do so. So we can assume that we can manage to get this straight. All right? So let's recapitulate. What have we done? Then we have moved the positioning of the rear arm mounting axis backwards, and actually, as it looks, not so much upwards, just backwards. I'm thinking that yeah, if you now look at the position of the rear axis, it's not in the middle of the wheel, of course, but the reason is that there's too much metal in the way here, and that obviously I don't need, so I can more or less cut this off, sort of like this, or as my copper line suggests, but then I'm just leaving holes, so I'm going to leave a structural piece here first. So I'm just going to take the radius of the tire, and I'm going to position it starting somewhere here. I'm going to clearance that, and then the tire can move forward. That's the first step, because none of this I need. That's just weight savings. So I'm going to leave all of this here. It's all double metal. There's all profiles inside to stabilize it, so we'll leave that. And I obviously eventually I will need to add something to attach to this hole, but let's get that's part of the next subject. Now the first thing that I need to answer, whether I'll be the positioning in relationship to the frame then is high enough, which currently it is not. But if you take a circle where the center of the circle sits here at this mounting point and then moves around here and creates a curve, and that curve just goes somewhere here, so it would be more up, and there, as in if I would bring this down. And when the angle here becomes shallower, or becomes more shallow, it compromises the functionality. So I'm thinking about leaving this upper mounting position where it is. Yes, and that changes my whole plan around the tank, because I don't want to cut it somewhere here
then everything changes. And then I'm really out in the woods without knowing and no more datum for the upper mounting position. So let's assume that I will keep the upper mounting position as the highest thing on the bike in the first place. Let's just assume that. I can always change my mind later. And you see like two areas of white tape. The lower one and the higher one. So we got about 25 millimeters of potential up here. Here 50 millimeters potential from up there. Yeah. So yeah, now I'm basically like engineering this as we sit here. The center where the wheel up is, now we established the tire is going to move forward, okay? So that is going to happen. It's probably one of my first cuts that I'm going to make, is make clearance in the rear tail, like there, this point, this little area. I'm going to cut that, and then the tire can move forward. But I'm also thinking I need to go up with the center here first of all, because my mock-up isn't correct when it comes to the center of the positioning of the hub. It's incorrect. I need to go up more. And where does that put me with the upper mounting position? I will need to extend this rear fork more. I have to. Otherwise the center doesn't come up. So just imagine that. I move this point backwards, this angle changes, and then that brings up the positioning. Yep. It's quite extreme what I have here. It's very extreme what I want here. And I'm going to go about it with mild measures. What actually is this little schnupsy that's coming down here? What is that? What's that for? Don't know. Is it for exhaust? That's going to be somewhere here. Quite low. And I'm planning to use one of the big fat /cat exhausts and just shortening it. And I will make sure that it eliminates one of the baffles, the same process. And the main baffles I'm going to replace with pea shooters to improve the sound. And I am going to need to do nothing else, I think, for the exhaust. So let's continue. Let's assume that the mounting position, upper mounting position of the rear suspension arm is staying where it is. Not a good plan. I'm going to move it down. I'm going to move it down. Because otherwise I am just not going to be lower than my rear tire. I have to do that. So I can move it forward and down. So if I draw a radius, let's say it goes down by 20, it will also go forward by 20, and that doesn't help at all for the positioning of the rear hub. So you see, if this stays fixed and that moves in a circle, so then it moves forward and it doesn't move down, but it clears the height. So then for bringing up the rear hub, I need to extend.
And if this extends, then this goes in a circle up the way, and then we're going to be somewhere here, and it's going to be all right. So let's move on. Next subject. This height, I'm going to cut it here, and then I'm going to cut it here, and then this thing slots down, and then that moves back a little bit, just by this much. This point moves to there, backwards. I have enough space, and then I need to fill this up with a plate. If me, rather than, yeah, I can move this point forward to here. If, yeah, it's rusty anyway. So I'm gonna make new plates around that and move it down and forward. Yeah, what's going on inside here? This actually would be part of the mudguard if you so want. It's also part of the structure side by side. So as much as possible, I'll leave it in. And want to move the tank obviously down. The tank's mounted here. So if I move this down, the tank goes with it. In order to clearance, I need to get rid of this wall, move it back. So I can leave the upper part here, lift side by side, or I can replace it by something similar, and down here it'll be in the way for the tank, because this means the tank moves slightly. Actually, maybe I will just modify the tank the same as this, and then it's the smaller and it drops down. So far so good. I think that's enough thinking for one day, and I know I've been waffling and the subject is complicated. So if you were patient and you were able to follow, please comment. Let me know what you think. I know the build's complicated, but I'm not looking for simple. I am trying to achieve something that is quite hard to achieve, and I'm trying to achieve it with the least amount of loss of datum. So far so good. I wish you a nice Sunday, and I will post this now. Take care, be well, please comment, like, subscribe, and so on.